My brother accidentally texted me while the rest of my family was making fun of me, even though I'd been covering their bills for months. "She's just an ATM," they laughed. I didn't say anything. I kept quiet, until the bills started stacking up again and they came running. I'm Sam, 26 years old. I'm not one to cause a scene. I've always been the quiet one, the one who does what's asked without making a fuss. But this situation? It's been eating at me for a long time, and I think it's time I finally say something. I've always been the reliable one. If someone needed help, I was there, whether it was a ride, a loan, or just someone to call. I was the family's go-to. That's just who I was, and they all knew it. Over the years, I got used to dropping everything when they needed me. That's just how it worked. But slowly, it started to feel like I was carrying way more than my share. And to be honest, I didn't even mind, not at first. I mean, family's supposed to help each other out, right? It started with my parents. Money got tight, especially after my dad's small business went under. They'd always lived a little beyond their means, but the financial hit was rough. They weren't completely broke, they were just drowning in debt. So when my mom called one day sounding extra soft-spoken and said, "Sam, sweetheart, things are a little tight this month. Your dad and I are behind on the mortgage. Do you think you could help with the bills? Just this month?" I already knew what a little tight meant. My dad was never good with money, and my mom's job was never stable, even though she liked to act like it was. I had a decent job, not amazing, but enough to live comfortably. So I said yes without hesitation. I wasn't about to let them lose their home. But just 1 month turned into 3. Then 6. Each time, the story was the same, they were almost back on their feet, they just needed a little more time. And each time, I gave in. Then my brother Matt got involved. He's 3 years older than me, 32, and from the outside, it looked like he had it more together. But just like the rest of us, he was struggling. He and his wife Sarah had 2 kids and lived in a townhouse that was clearly out of their budget. Matt wasn't lazy, he worked part-time as a carpenter, but his hours were hit or miss. Sarah had a side hustle, but it didn't bring in much. "Hey Sam, could you help us with rent this month?" he texted one day. "Things are a little hectic." He sounded hesitant, almost embarrassed. I wasn't thrilled about it, but what could I say? He's my brother. I agreed, but I told him it couldn't become a habit. Of course, it did. Rent turned into car insurance. Then groceries. Matt would message me at random hours asking for help. And every time, I said yes. Because again, family. At first, it felt okay. Like I was doing my part. But the more I gave, the more they asked. And the less they seemed to care. No one said thank you anymore. No one acted like it mattered that I was the one keeping things afloat. And when I didn't answer fast enough, or couldn't send money right away, I'd hear little comments like, "Sam's always too busy," or "She's got more money than she knows what to do with." It hurt. But I let it go. I didn't want to be petty. I kept telling myself if I just helped a little longer, things would turn around. But they never did. They just kept needing, and I kept giving. Then came the moment everything changed. I was having an insanely stressful week at work, a big project was due, and I was stretched thin trying to manage everything. I was making a few last-minute edits at my desk, trying to focus, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Matt. "Hey Sam, can you help cover the car payment this month? We're a little short." I sighed. It wasn't the first time he'd asked for something like this. But then came the next message, and that's what really made my stomach drop. "Honestly, I don't know how much longer we can keep leaning on Sam. She doesn't even realize she's just an ATM to us. It's not like she has unlimited money, but she acts like she does. I mean, sure, she wants to feel useful, but this is getting ridiculous." I stared at my screen, frozen. That text wasn't meant for me. It was meant for Sarah, Matt's wife. He'd sent it to me by mistake. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to fire back right away, demand an explanation, confront him head-on. But I knew better than to start a fight through a text. So I didn't reply. I just sat there, shocked. The next few days were tense. I didn't say a word to Matt. I didn't tell anyone else either. But the feeling wouldn't leave me, the anger, the hurt, the betrayal. After everything I'd done for them, they saw me as nothing more than a bank. What hurt the most? I realized they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew I wouldn't say no. That I'd answer every call. That I'd send the money, again and again. I had become part of the pattern, and I had let it happen. Then, like clockwork, my mom called. "Sweetheart," she said in that gentle, almost rehearsed tone, "we're falling behind on the mortgage again. Your dad's been talking to the bank, but we just need a little help to catch up." That was the moment I snapped, silently, in my head. I didn't say anything to her then. But inside, I was done. I had given so much, and still, they saw me as nothing but a lifeline, a fallback plan. I couldn't keep throwing money into a black hole that never closed. So I didn't reply right away. I decided to sit with it. Think. Come up with a plan. But the very next day, I got another text, this time from my mom. "Sam, please. We need you. We can't do this without you." And that's when it hit me. They were already doing it without me. They just didn't realize it yet. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to keep saving them. I wasn't going to keep being their safety net. I was done. What I didn't expect was how quiet everything got. Too quiet. No follow-ups from my mom. No late-night texts from Matt. Just silence. I didn't know if they were giving me space or waiting for me to cave. But I knew it wasn't over. They weren't going to just let this go, not after depending on me for so long. It had become their routine, and breaking it was going to be harder than I thought. 5 days passed. Then, that evening, my mom called again. Her voice sounded soft, but there was something different, like she knew something had changed. She always had a way of sensing when I was pulling away. "Sam, honey, we really need to talk," she said, trying to sound calm. But the nervousness crept through. "I know things have been tough lately, but I'm really worried about your dad. We don't know how we're going to get through next month without some help." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I could already feel the guilt starting to wrap around me. I wanted to explain, to tell her I couldn't keep doing this. But I knew what was coming. She'd say what she always said. "You're the only one who can help us, Sam. Or worse, you don't want us to suffer, do you? Lose the house, do you?" She knew exactly how to pull at my heartstrings, she always had. But this time, I stayed silent. I didn't want to cave. "You're the only one who can fix this," she added, her voice nearly pleading. "We've been through so much, and I know you've helped more than anyone, but we're behind again, and I don't know what to do anymore." I wanted to tell her I didn't know either. That I was tired, mentally, emotionally, financially. That I was exhausted from being the one who always had to step in and clean up the mess. But all I said was, "I'll think about it." That was the last conversation I had with my mom before everything started to fall apart. The very next day, Matt showed up at my apartment without warning. He'd done it before, usually when he needed something. I wasn't sure if he was there to talk about that text he'd sent by mistake, or if he was just here to ask for more money. But the second I opened the door, I saw it in his eyes: guilt, frustration, maybe even a little fear. He knew something had shifted. "Sam, we need to talk," he said, his voice trying to sound steady but clearly nervous. "Look, I know that text was messed up. I didn't mean for you to see it. But you have to understand, we really need your help. We're struggling. We can't keep doing this without you." I stepped back to let him in, doing my best to stay calm. I didn't want to fight, but I also wasn't going to keep pretending like everything was fine. "Matt," I said, my voice lower than I intended. "I've been helping for months. I've paid your rent. Covered mom and dad's bills. Done everything I could. But I'm tired. You and Sarah should have planned better. You can't keep spending money you don't have and expect me to fix it every time. I just can't do it anymore. He didn't respond at first. Just stood there, staring like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Like the word no had never existed between us before. Sam, he finally said, his voice rising. We're family. You don't just walk away from family when they're in trouble. You don't just stop helping because it's hard. I'm not walking away, I said, standing firm. I'm just not going to carry everyone anymore. I can't keep fixing this. You guys have to start taking responsibility. His face twisted with frustration. You don't get it. We're not asking for a handout. We're just asking for some help so we can get back on track. But I guess that's too much to ask, huh? You're just like everyone else. Leaving us hanging. I clenched my jaw, trying to stay composed. I didn't want to argue, I wanted him to understand. I couldn't keep being their crutch. You're being selfish, Sam, he snapped. You act like you're the victim, but you're not. We're the ones struggling. You've got everything you need, and you won't even help your own family? My heart was pounding. All the months of resentment, of feeling unappreciated and used, it was boiling up. But I didn't let it spill over. I took a deep breath. It's not that I don't want to help, I said quietly. It's that I've helped too much. And you and Sarah need to figure things out yourselves. I can't keep swooping in every time something goes wrong. He stared at me, jaw tight, his expression hard. I thought he might lash out again. But instead, he looked toward the door. For a second, I thought he might leave quietly, maybe even accept it. But instead, he let out a breath, shoulders slumping. Guess we'll just have to figure it out ourselves, then, he muttered. Thanks for nothing. Figure something out for yourselves. I can't keep doing this, I said, trying to stay calm but firm. She paused for a moment, then let out a long sigh. Well, I hope you don't regret this later, she said, her tone laced with disappointment. You might think you're doing the right thing now, but one day you'll realize how much you've hurt this family. I didn't respond. I'd heard enough. The guilt trips, the emotional blackmail, it was all so familiar. But this time, I wasn't going to let it break me. I ended the call and sat in silence, letting the weight of it all settle. The days that followed were emotionally draining. Messages kept coming in, some subtle, some not so much. Matt sent a long text one night, saying he understood I was stressed but asking if I could just help out this one last time. He tried to make it sound like it wasn't a big deal. That it would just be a little support until things got better. But I'd heard that before. I'd lived it. And I knew where it led. Even family friends started reaching out. One of my mom's old friends messaged me on Facebook, saying she'd heard some things and hoped I was okay. It was clear the story being told behind my back was very different from the one I was living. Apparently, I'd turned cold. I was abandoning the people who raised me. Selfish. Ungrateful. Harsh. But none of them knew the truth. None of them knew what it felt like to constantly be the one everyone leaned on. To never hear thank you. To always be the solution, but never the priority. I wasn't cutting them off out of spite, I was protecting what little of myself I had left. Eventually, I stopped responding to the messages altogether. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally realized I had to care about myself first. I had boundaries now. And I was learning to stick to them, even when it hurt. The silence that followed wasn't peace, but it was necessary. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing up, not just to them, but for myself. Control slipping through their fingers. They weren't just irritated that I wasn't helping like I used to, they were shaken by the fact that I was finally setting boundaries. And the more I stuck to them, the more desperate their messages became. Matt texted again, this time short and blunt, "Why are you playing games with us? Either help or don't." I didn't respond right away. I read the message and set my phone down. For once, I didn't feel that urgent pull to explain myself. I wasn't playing games, I was showing them what it felt like to stand on their own. I wasn't cutting them off, I was giving them a taste of reality, something they had been shielded from for too long. The next few days were filled with passive-aggressive messages and awkward silence. My mom sent one of those just checking in texts, followed by, "We got your little deposits. Not sure what you're trying to prove." But I wasn't trying to prove anything, I was reclaiming space for myself. Every little transfer with a label was my way of saying, "This is how much I've done. This is how much it costs to keep bailing you out. Look at it." They never saw the effort before. Now, they couldn't ignore it. By the end of the second week, the joint account hadn't been touched. I figured they were holding out, hoping I'd give in and send one big payment like before. But I didn't. I stuck to my plan. Then came the voicemail from Matt. His voice was tight, frustrated, trying to stay composed. "You've made your point. We get it. But this isn't you, Sam. You're not the type to turn your back on people. You're better than this." That hit harder than I thought it would. Because he wasn't wrong, at least not completely. I am the kind of person who shows up. But that doesn't mean I have to show up blindly. It doesn't mean I have to destroy myself to keep someone else afloat. I had finally drawn a line, and yeah, it was uncomfortable for everyone. But that didn't make it wrong. So I didn't call him back. I didn't explain. I let the silence speak. And in that silence, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace, the kind I should have said a long time ago. They didn't have to like it. They didn't even have to understand it. What mattered was that I was finally protecting my own peace, and for the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in guilt for doing it. That night, as I drove home, my chest still felt tight, but it wasn't from stress or anger. It was something else. Something new. Maybe relief. Maybe freedom. I'd spent so long trying to be everything for everyone, constantly stepping in to fix what they broke, hoping one day they'd finally get it. But that day never came. Not until I stopped trying. Over the next few days, there was silence. No calls. No texts. Just quiet. At first, I kept waiting for the next guilt trip, the next emotional ambush. But it never came. And slowly, I started to feel the space around me open up. I started waking up without dread in my chest. I started thinking about what I needed, what I wanted. And not in a selfish way, but in a human way. The kind of self-care I had never really allowed myself before. Sure, I still felt moments of doubt. I'd catch myself wondering if I'd gone too far, if I'd hurt them more than I needed to. But every time those thoughts crept in, I reminded myself, I didn't abandon them. I just stopped abandoning myself. Because at the end of the day, love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-sacrifice. And I was done bleeding for people who couldn't see that. Now, maybe things will change someday. Maybe they'll come around. Maybe we'll rebuild. But if not, I'll still be okay. Because I'm no longer living my life trying to hold everyone else together. I'm finally learning how to hold myself together instead. And that's a version of me I'm proud to be. Me, for my own peace, my own progress, and not out of guilt or obligation. The freedom that came with that choice was something I hadn't expected. I had spent so long wrapped up in their needs that I didn't even realize how much of myself I had put on hold. With every day that passed, I grew stronger in my decisions. I started saving more, investing in myself, and dreaming about things that had once felt out of reach. Simple things, like taking a vacation, or starting a side project I'd always put off because I was too busy fixing someone else's mess. My relationship with my family didn't disappear, it just changed. It became healthier, with space and boundaries that were long overdue. I didn't jump every time the phone rang. I didn't feel drained after every conversation. I stopped feeling like I owed them my peace just because we were related. It took a long time, but they began to respect the distance. Maybe not fully, and maybe not with gratitude, but they understood that I meant it. I wasn't abandoning them, I was finally choosing me. And that choice made all the difference.